Man, I like that. I like that attitude. Oh my, what did we do? What have we gotten ourselves into? I bet you didn't know what you were missing because you don't tweet. Look how happy that makes your life. You can dress like a Disney princess. You can sing. By the way, did you recognize the princesses? We had Snow White, and we had Belle, and we had Rapunzel and Cinderella. And by the way, I would like to thank the YouTube contributors who made that. If you would like to see the full, because I cut it down, there actually is a thing out there called Twitter the Musical. You can go see that on your own time. Okay? All right. By the way, it's also got Facebook the Musical. They've done a lot of these things. It's really a lot of fun. But just so you know, for those like, oh my gosh, what have we gotten ourselves into? Here we go. Twitter. It was created in March of 2006. Can you believe it's that old? By Jack Dorsey, Noah Glass, and Biz Stone, and Evan Williams. And it launched in July of that year. The service rapidly gained worldwide popularity, and in 2012, more than 100 million users posted 340 million tweets a day. Wow, that's a lot of numbers. The service handles an average of 1.6 billion searches per day. Think they don't get this, they don't have a lot of traffic? As a matter of fact, in 2013, it was one of the 10 most visited websites. As of 2018, Twitter had more than 321 million monthly active users. And an active user means that you post at least 10 tweets a month. Think about that. Think about it, 321 million active users. Now you're probably thinking, well, what's a Twitter? Some of you are probably going to say, I have no idea what a Twitter is, and the last thing I heard, a tweet was something that a bird does in a tree. Well, Twitter is a microblogging, social networking service where a user posts and interacts with messages that they call tweets. Registered users can post, like, retweet, and tweet, but here's an interesting thing. Unregistered users can only read them. So if you want to get involved, you actually got to sign up. Now, tweets were originally restricted to 140 characters. So they may be little short bursts. Just so you know, when the Arabic countries and the Chinese countries and the Asian countries came online, they had to increase it to 280 characters because of the way their language is structured. So today it's 280, but the original was 140. And here's the thing, and this should catch your attention. If you're particularly interested in what a person has to say, you can register to get updates to everything they post. And when you register, you are called a follower. Wow. Isn't that a nice, cool connection? Somebody did all the hard work for me when they did this. And so that brings us to what we're going to be doing for the next 6 weeks. We're going to be talking about Jesus tweets. Now, I'm not being sacrilegious, nor am I demeaning the message of God, but wouldn't you like to know what if Jesus was here today in the 21st century and he had a Twitter account, what would he be posting? What would I be reading? And the thing is, I don't even have to guess. I already know, because there's already a place where he posted everything he wanted to say. We call it the Bible. Now, just so you know, this particular little sermon series caught my attention a few years ago when I purchased a book called The Hard Sayings of Jesus by F.F. Bruce. Now, it's not a book that I'm going to encourage you to run to Amazon and buy unless you have trouble sleeping. It is not a book that is designed to read from cover to cover. Instead, it is one of those books that was designed to help you research and understand some of Jesus' more confusing, confrontational, or maybe even controversial statements. And so this is one of those books, and we're not going to do the whole book. The whole book has 62 different sayings in it. So we could be here for a little bit over a year, but instead I picked out 6. 6 of the ones that seem to intersect with where our lives struggle with the idea of faith and what did Jesus have to say about them. Now, I played by the rules. Every single one of the sayings I picked out are 140 characters or less. So these literally could be a tweet if Jesus was here today. Now, this ties in because today we have a celebration of independence. Please note, I have my white, I have my blue. You know how I know it's blue? Because before I left the house this morning, I handed the shirt to my wife and said, "Is it blue?" And she said, yes. I'm like, cool, we'll wear that. And then I have my little bit of red right here, so I have my patriotic theme going on. I have my red, white, and blue, and because yesterday we celebrated independence. And when we talk about celebrating independence, one word is the word that we think about. We celebrate the word freedom. That's really what Independence Day is all about. We celebrate this word we call freedom. Now, I read an article, and actually it was this morning. It was in my morning headlines that that America's patriotism and America's beliefs on freedom is at an all-time low, according to a poll that was taken. And a lot of that is attributed to what's going on in our world, because let's be honest, freedom has taken quite a beating over this 2020, hasn't it? I mean, they put freedom in things, and they put restrictions on things that honestly I never thought they would put restrictions on. So our freedom has taken quite a beating. And well, the question is how did we respond? Well, differently. Some people responded, and when their freedom was challenged and they were asked to do things differently, they complied. We socially distanced. Did you ever think you'd see the day when we actually didn't have services in the building and everything was forced online? That was the churches trying to do what was right. We complied. Not everybody complied. Some people complained. Yeah, they did what they were asked to do, but the entire time that they were doing it, they grumbled and complained and moped and just made everybody else miserable because they realized what they were doing was the right thing, but they didn't like it. Some flat out resisted. I'm not going to do that. You've asked too much of me. Live in a free country. I can do what I want. Some people flat out refused and are still refusing. And some, unfortunately, fought. They decided that, you know what, my freedom is so important to me that I'm willing to go to the mat for it. And you know, the funny thing is I've had a lot of conversations over the past few months about this word freedom. And people giving me their opinions, lots of opinions about what they think about statues and what they think about flags and what they think about masks and what they think about social distancing. And I've had everybody give me lots of opinions. You know what not one single person has given me? What did Jesus say? And so as you're looking at that cute little cartoon Twitter bird with his head kind of cocked and that little question mark over his head, this is a big question, isn't it? When it came to this freedom thing, when it came to what Jesus was saying, when Jesus had to deal with these tough issues, the hard things, as Azariah was talking about, when he had to deal with those, what did Jesus say? Now, a lot of times we don't like to talk about this because if I figure out what Jesus said, then you know, as a follower, what is my responsibility? To do it. So the question is did Jesus have anything to say in this arena when it came to freedom? Now, obviously, you know the answer is yes, because we're going to preach the sermon. If not, we'd have a very short sermon. I'd say thank you for coming. We'd all go home. But Jesus has something very remarkable to say about it. He had it to say in Mark chapter 12, verse 17, portion of one verse. Give back to Caesar what is Caesar's, and to God what is God's. Now you're probably thinking, what on earth does that have to do with anything that we're going through? He doesn't mention a flag. He doesn't mention a statue. He doesn't mention a mask. He doesn't mention anything. What does this have to do with what we're experiencing in 2020 America? And well, let me just give you a little context of this story. Matter of fact, let me read the whole thing to you. Matthew chapter 12, verses 13 through 17. Later, they sent some of the Pharisees and the Herodians to Jesus to catch him in his words. They came to him and said, "Teacher, we know you are a man of integrity. You aren't swayed by others because you pay no attention to what they are, but you teach the way of God in accordance with the truth. Is it right to pay imperial taxes to Caesar or not? Should we pay or shouldn't we?" But Jesus knew their hypocrisy. "Why are you trying to trap me?" he asked. "Bring me a denarius and let me look at it." They brought him the coin, and he asked them, "Whose image is on this, and whose inscription?" "Caesar's," they replied. Then Jesus said to them, "Give back to Caesar what is Caesar's, and to God what is God's. And I love the ending of this statement. And they were amazed at him. So let me kind of break this little story down, and then we'll talk about what it means to our modern day situation. Like happens so many times in Jesus' ministry, this all starts out as a trap. They're trying to trap Jesus. And so they come in, and as any good traps are laid, they began buttering Jesus up. Now, what do I mean by buttering him up? Well, they said, "Teacher, we know you're a man of integrity. You are not swayed by others because you pay no attention to who they are, but you teach the way of God in accordance with the truth." You know what the funny thing is? They did not believe him a man of integrity. They thought he was a heretic. These men had no respect for Jesus. As a matter of fact, Jesus understood they were being hypocritical in what they were asking. They weren't interested at all in what Jesus had to say. They just wanted to get him to say something so that they would have something to talk about. You know what the other thing is they did not believe he taught truth. I mean, remember, he had already claimed to be the Son of God. He had already had several confrontations with these Pharisees, so they did not believe that he taught truth whatsoever. You see, what they were trying to do is, they were trying to trap Jesus. So they set him up, and then they went in to basically dismantle him. And they asked him this very interesting question. Very appropriate question for us. Is it right to pay the imperial tax to Caesar or not? Should we pay or shouldn't we? Now, if you want to stir up people, especially church people, all you have to do is introduce the topic of politics. I promise you, we will have an argument. I learned a long time ago. Politics and religion make bad bedfellows, and that's why you don't hear politics from this pulpit. I am not a politician. You'll never hear me endorse a candidate. You'll never hear me give you a sway one way or the other of how you should cast your vote. That is between you and God, not my business. But if you want to get people really upset, talk about politics, and if you want to get them to froth at the mouth, talk about taxes. Did you not read in the paper that the IRS is not going to give another extension? Your taxes are due July 15th, whether you have them or not. If you didn't know that, newsflash, you're about to have to pay your taxes, but they gave you grace from April till July. Well, July is here. And so if you want to get people upset, go ahead, sit down, mention the word taxes. I hope you have a little while because you're going to have a very long conversation because everybody has an opinion about taxes, including me. Ask my kids. I have some very set view on my opinion of taxes. So if you want to do that, it's important. But what the Pharisees were trying to do here is put Jesus in a socially unpopular situation. Catch what he's saying. This isn't 21st century America where I can go out and say whatever I want. If Jesus tells the people they have to pay taxes, then he can be accused, they can accuse him of being for a corrupt government. That's what they would have done. If Jesus said, yeah, you have to pay those taxes, you have to do those things, it's right for you to do it, then this would have been all over Jerusalem. And they would have used this to discredit Jesus. But think about the other side of the coin. Pun totally intended there. If he says they don't have to pay taxes, then they can go and report him to the government as a rebel and have him arrested. So here's your choice. Lose your faith or lose your freedom. Which one would we pick? That's an interesting dilemma Jesus is in. As a matter of fact, he's in a no-win situation. That is, unless your name happened to be Jesus. See, because that's the backstory. He started with this idea of this one simple little coin. Jesus said, hey, look, give me a coin. And we're going to dive a little bit deeper into the coin story in just a moment. But when he finished explaining this object lesson of the coin, you know what it says? And I love it. It says, they were amazed at him. Let me give you the look at the end of Jesus' object lesson. Here it is. They had nothing else to say. This simple answer of give to Caesar what is Caesar and give to God what is God, it was so prophetical, it was so out there that they didn't have any rebuttal. Nothing else came back from them. They just kind of had to sit there and say absolutely nothing. And now I'm interested. Why did it have such an impact? Well, you have to get into the idea that give back to Caesar what is Caesar's, and when God is God's. It's a two-part answer. As a matter of fact, his answer was much bigger than what they had asked for. Now, it is an issue for us and for the Jews, this idea of, do I pay taxes? It was not just an issue for the Jews. It is an issue for us. You see, the Jews were part of the Roman government, and the Roman government was hated by the Jews, and rightly so. The Romans had been an invading army. They came in and took them by force. They were being forced to live under Roman rule. They didn't elect these officials. The Roman government from somewhere down in lower in Europe, they were the ones appointing these people. These aren't our people. These aren't the ones that I want to follow. They don't even share my religious beliefs. Why on earth would I want to follow them? So there was a huge social issue going on in Rome at that time. Of course, there was also a very, very, very huge faith issue. You see, the Caesars considered themselves gods. Listen to this quote. On his death, Julius Caesar was officially recognized as a god, the divine Julius by the Roman state. And in 29 BC, Caesar's adopted son, the first Roman emperor Augustus, allowed the culturally Greek city of Asia Minor to set up a temple to him. So this was the idea of you're asking us to worship another god. When you're asking me to give money back to Caesar, Caesar considers himself another god. So why on earth would you ask me to pay that money to him? After all, Jesus, haven't you read Genesis chapter 20, verse 3 and 4? You shall have no other gods before me. You shall not make for yourself an image in the form of anything in heaven, above the earth, beneath the waters, or below. You shall not bow down to them and worship them. For I, the Lord, am your God, and I am a jealous God. There's a lot of ways we could probably dig into that verse. But I just want you to see, at least the Jews had an idea. I'm only supposed to worship one God. I'm only supposed to do that. Don't you know I've got faith issues with these taxes, Jesus? I've got faith issues with what the government is asking me to do. And I just want to ask you, have we not found 2020 America? I mean, as I am describing the situation that Jesus is sitting in, doesn't this sound very much like the conversations we're having today? Now, it's a little bit different because they inherited their government. We elected ours. I mean, the people that we have down in up in Washington, up in Washington, and those that are over in Richmond, you understand, they are elected officials. Now, maybe it's not the person you voted for, but they're elected. And interesting enough, even when we choose the government, we struggle with this idea of freedom versus faith. I mean, after all, we live in a country where, for the most part, we are free to disagree. Sometimes that's questionable these days. But we're free to disagree. However, we tend to extend that idea that I am free to disagree to I'm free to disrespect. And then the amazing thing is then when we come up with something, we're going to be disrespectful and we're not going to even give idea of what the government means to us, then we all try to sweep it under the idea of, well, freedom and faith, right? How many times have you heard somebody over the past couple of months quote the First Amendment to you? How many times have you read it in the newspaper? Well, they can't do that. That's against the First Amendment. Yep. If you want to read by the letter of law, if you want to live by the law, let me know. But then we try to justify our desire to be disrespectful to authority by saying, well, I'm free. And don't you know there's a faith issue here? The problem is that while we're doing that, we've forgotten two other words that come with that faith. It's called responsible and accountable. And so when Jesus gives his answer, this is where he's bringing in. He is bringing in the idea of responsible and accountable. You see, we absolutely do have something in common with those Pharisees that day as they asked Jesus this question. Because we want to say whatever we want to say, we want to do whatever we want to do, and then we want to say, you know what? It's me. It's what I want. It's what I want to say. It's what I want to do. It's where I want to go. And then when we're questioned on it, then we want to let God be the great justifier behind our actions. And you know the funny thing is, Jesus wouldn't have none of it. Jesus would have none of that. Jesus would not do any of those things. He would not participate in what they were asking him to do. And just so you know, his lesson was beautiful. So let's talk about this coin. The Roman coin system was minted by the Roman government. It was used to create a common standard of trade across the Roman Empire. So remember, Rome went out and it conquered a bunch of different territories. All of those territories had their own monetary system. Even the Jewish territory, they had the temple coins that you paid your temple tax with. So everybody had their own system, and so the government said, well, we're going to make this a lot easier. We're going to make one. And you know what? In spite of the fact that you may have been paid or received that coin as a gift, on that coin, you know, it was made very apparent. It was the property of the Roman government. It was theirs. If you don't believe me, when you get there, when you get home, take out a dollar bill out of your wallet, and it says it's the property of the Treasury Department. It has all of the things on how much it's worth, and yeah, I went to work and they paid me for it, but it's it's their property. So while the Jews disagreed with much of the Roman government, you have to understand they still received benefit from it, didn't it? I mean, their military protected their borders. It was their system that brought in technology like the running water system that came from Rome. Many of the things that the freedoms that they were putting forward came in because of the Roman government. Now, as the years went by, they became more oppressive, and it got worse. But I guess what you could say is the idea that they had a responsibility through these taxes because they were simply paying for services rendered, right? Now, it was important because Roman taxes could only be paid by Roman coins. So if you wanted to pay, when it was time to pay your taxes, if all you had was local money, you had to go to the local money changer and change in and get your taxes so you can go and pay your taxes. So Jesus is making a really good point here, because really all is being asked of you is to return to Caesar what is technically already Caesar's. You're being asked to return a coin that they minted. It was their property, and he just wants a portion of it returned. Now, it's a beautiful answer. It really is. But again, the answer was bigger than the question. Because if Jesus had stopped the answer there, if he said, give to Caesar what is Caesar's, then let me tell you what the headline in the Jerusalem Gazette would have read. It would have said, Jesus said we must pay tribute to Caesar. And you know what? He would have been right. I mean, that would have been the headline. That would have been everywhere. And you do get that this would have caused a problem in Jesus' own little group. After all, he had Simon the Zealot, which was an anti-Roman political party, and he had Matthew the tax collector, who was a former employee of the Roman government system and the Department of Taxation. Could you imagine if Jesus had said that? Could you see what the campfire conversation would be like? That would have been better than the church business meeting. I mean, they would still be discussing that today. There would probably been a Simon church and a Matthew church. It would have split everybody. But Jesus continues with his answer. And he gives that second part. Give to God what is God. And in true fashion, Jesus turned their question back on themselves because he knew their hypocrisy. He took their simple question and he tied it right into where they were living. You see, he knew the question wasn't about taxes. The question was about authority. The question is, who's in charge? The question is, who is the person that has the right to tell me what I'm supposed to do and what I'm not supposed to do? Who is it that I'm supposed to listen to? And Jesus makes it very, very, very clear with this second part. Because I want you to appreciate, as the Jews got that answer, where they would have to stand. See, because the land they called the Holy Land, remember how they got that land? It was given by God. Remember the book of Joshua? When Joshua went, oh my gosh, just so you know, a mail truck just came right up there and this mirror caught, and I just got this flash right in my eyes, so that'll look cool on the live stream later. But this land, it came from God. And their very existence had been given to them by God. I mean, remember, these are Jewish people, so they believed in the Torah. So they went all the way back to Genesis 1:1. In the beginning, God created. So guess what? You don't even get to breathe without God. You see, Jesus wanted them to understand the value in their life was not their bottom line balance sheet. It was your relationship with God. Wow. That's a boatload of an answer, isn't it? I mean, that is hard for me to understand. Well, not really. You see, just like the coin that was designed and minted and placed into circulation by the Roman government, so are you. Ever think about it like that? You were designed and minted by the great Creator. You were placed here on this planet by God. The life that you enjoy and the things that sustain you were also created by God. So you are simply placed in circulation by an authority. I don't know that I like this very much. I like my faith and freedom. Well, you understand there is freedom and faith, but you can't divide the two. You see, we are indeed His creation. Everybody. Every single one of us. I don't care what the color of your skin is. I don't care what state you grew up in or what country you grew up in. I'm assuming you grew up on this planet. Everybody is part of God's creation. All the way back at the beginning, God created two, and they made everybody else. So that means, guess what? We're all connected. We're all part of His creation. Boy, we forget this sometimes. We really struggle with this. But since I am minted by God, and since I am put in circulation by God, what does this mean to me if I am going to give to God what is God's, especially in relationship to the world where my freedoms are being challenged? Well, how about we let Peter answer the question? I always like Peter's answers. They're pretty straightforward. They're pretty easy to understand. They don't go theologically deep, and I can apply them when I walk out the door. I like Peter's answers. But you are a chosen people, a royal priesthood, a holy nation, God's special possession, that you may declare the praises of Him who called you out of darkness into the wonderful light. Once you were not a people, but now you are the people of God. Once you had not received mercy, but now you have received mercy. Now, Peter is talking to people that have a Jewish background, but you need to understand he is talking to a church. He is talking to Christians. And I love these labels. We're really big into labels these days, aren't we? I have a whole other label discussion that we can have one day. Maybe even a whole other label sermon series someday. But we're really big into labels. But I want you to take a look at the labels that Peter slaps on us, Christians. You are a chosen people. It doesn't give you a, look, God chose me. I'm special. I made the kickball team. He picked me to be on His team. Understand, He chose you because you chose to follow Him. Okay? Because you were willing to bend your heart and submit to Him, because you were willing to return to Him that which belonged to Him already. You're a chosen people. And He says we are royal priesthood. Now, before you get too caught up on that, and you go out and buy yourself a black coat and a little bitty thing that goes up here, and you deem yourself a priest, understand what a priest is. He's just the person that represents God to humanity and humanity to God. So, when Peter calls us a royal priesthood, we are the ambassadors for Jesus. That sounds like an important job. It says we're a holy nation, which is a group of people set aside for a mission. So it says when I'm holy, that doesn't mean I'm like perfect. It doesn't mean I got sprinkled with some kind of special water. It doesn't mean that I need to go out and buy some shirt that says I'm holy. I don't need a label. But you understand, God set me aside. When I chose Him, He said, I have a mission for you. Boy, okay, this sounds important. And it says I'm a special possession. Now, I like the word special because I like being treated special. I don't know that I like the word possession, but you realize you're God's. He bought you off the shelf. We already discussed that during Father of the Bride. You belong to God. So when God says that you are supposed to give back to Him what is His, then what He's really saying about is give yourself back. So if you give yourself back, and it means that I'm now going to be doing something for God, then what does it mean about the authorities above me? It means that I give to them also. Out of reverence, not for them, out of reverence for my God. Wow, that's important for us to realize. Now that I know what the label is, the question is, what are we supposed to do with the product? And I think a lot of times we lose this. And again, I like Peter's answers because Peter speaks very slowly and very simply. What are we supposed to do with this special product, with this chosen people, with this special possession, with the royal priesthood, with the holy nation? It says we are to declare the praises of him who called you out of the darkness into the wonderful light. So that means in all of my actions and all of my words and all the things that I'm saying, I am supposed to live my life so bright that others can see the path to God. We preached an entire sermon series on this a few years ago. I'm supposed to shine. How am I supposed to shine? Remember the little anagram, the little thing we did, the little show your love to others, honor God in your worship, introduce others to Christ, notice the needs to others, encourage others. You realize the idea all about shine was what? Others. So that means I'm supposed to live my life in such a way that people can grasp who is Jesus. And so as we are looking at the things that are being placed before us, maybe sometimes we should do the little Twitter bird head cock and say, I wonder what Jesus would do with that. Would he do it or say, no way? Would he do it if it meant that he could reach a few more people? Or would he say, nah, I don't think so? You see, if I am giving to God what is God's, then this trumps my freedom. It means that I do whatever it takes to reach others for Christ. What did Paul say? I become all things to all men so that I may reach a few. I adapt. And in that adaptation, they should be able to see Jesus shine. You think, wow, that's hard. Yeah, I didn't say it was easy. If it was easy, everybody would do it. But God called us to be difficult at times. Do the difficult things. Take the difficult path. Remember how he compared those two paths? There was a wide road and a narrow road. One's easy, one's complicated. And this gets complicated because you know what? There's a lot going on in this world today and I'm kind of like, I don't want to do that. I don't want to participate in that. But you know what? God says, so why? Why is it so important? Because then I love what Peter does. He doesn't let us off the hook. He gives us this little glancing shot as a reminder. And I think it's important. Once you the church, once you the Christian, once you the follower, plug whatever word you want in there with the word you, we're not a people. It's true. There's a point in every single one of our lives before we accept Christ that maybe we're signed into the account and we're watching the tweets, but we're not part of the followers. He says, once that was you. Those people out there that are struggling with life, keep in mind, once that was you. But now, so there's a difference. I love that word but now you are the people of God. So you are here to represent God. Once you had not received mercy. You had the same fate they had. Now you have received mercy. So the question only becomes is, will you follow it? Will you take that mercy that God gave you and give it to somebody else and pay it down the line? And in so doing so, shine Christ into their life and make a difference to them. You're probably thinking, wow, that's a hard tweet. Yes, it is. By the way, this is the easy one. We're going uphill from here. This intersects with so many places in our life. But the question I want to ask you is, are you willing to follow? Are you willing to do what Jesus asked you to do? Even if sometimes it's inconvenient, even if sometimes it's obnoxious, even if sometimes it's uncomfortable, even if sometimes it asks me to give up my freedom so that I can show others Christ. Would you be willing to do that? No. This was a lot easier when all I had to do was just say amen in a church. No. The question is, what are you going to live out like out there?